following on Mr. Adamus' footsteps here, this will not be exciting or fun. So there you go. But hopefully good. And here we go, ACT reading preparation. So you think you can read? 25 minutes. Our main work for this hour here is actually just going to be mainly focusing on learning how to read the question. And my hope is that if you understand the question, you'll have a much better chance at getting the answer, right? It is thought that up to 1/3 of the time, an item was answered incorrectly because the student misinterpreted the question. Be sure to read the questions carefully and correctly, or you will get them wrong. And so our first movement of our study here is going to be practicing reading the question and trying to come up with an answer where I'm saying the same thing. Now, these will not be like questions that you'll find on the ACT reading. We'll get to those in a little while. But this is simply practice reading the question. And so we'll go through these one at a time here. But I'm going to ask, question 1, which of the following represents the most logical sequence for the paragraphs? And then I'm going to ask, all right, that's a question that will sound like a question on the ACT reading. But now instead of answers to that, A, B, C, or D, I'm going to ask which one of these says the same thing. So here, just practice understanding the question. So, number 1, which of the following represents the most logical sequence for the paragraphs? What's the answer? I already have it underlined for you.
A.
Good. A. In what order should the paragraphs be arranged? Here I'm saying the same thing. If you notice the other ones, which of the following sequences is illogical? Or what order should the paragraphs not be arranged? Or which paragraph would not be represented? Right? Most of those are the opposite thing. However, when you go, oh no, I've only got 35 minutes to take this test and I'm reading as quickly as possible, often you'll miss the big word that says not, or opposite, or all of these except. Don't do that, or you'll get it wrong. Right? So here, practice with number 2. Is the author's quote of D.H. Lawrence in the last paragraph appropriate? A, B, C, or D? Which one says the same thing? Go ahead and answer it on your paper. Here I like C. Notice A is talking more about the author, and then B is a different paragraph. D is just asking if it's quoted correctly or not. But C is most like her question. Keep practicing. Number 3. The author's intended audience is most likely A, B, C, or D. Which one says the same thing?
Geeks.
Good. Here I like B. Who does the author intend to address? Again, if you read too quickly, something like C, which audience does the author most like? Hey, that's got the word like, the other one has the word likely, those are kind of sound the same. No, that means something else. Read slowly, read well. Keep practicing. Number 4. How might the author have developed the essay so that it was more interesting? A, B, C, or D? Which one says the same thing? Here I like A. B and C are kind of opposites. And then D deals more with development instead of our focus here, which would be the interesting part. 5. Which of the following best describes the overall character of the essay? A, B, C, or D? Which one says the same thing? Here again, I like D. Note, in your English studies, when we've used the word character, a lot of times we've been talking about a person in the story. If you're reading too quickly, that might jump into your mind, but in this question, that's not what we're talking about. 6. What might logically have preceded this essay? A, B, C, or D? Which one says the same thing? Here I like A. And you have to know what the word preceded means. And this is different than precedent. 7. This essay is most probably taken from A, B, C, or D. It says the same thing. Here I like C. 2 more of these. Number 8. Where might you find this essay published? A, B, C, or D? Which one says the same thing? Here I like C. Okay, notice the specific, this essay, not most essays, and it's not a personal where would you want to publish this. It's a different question. 9. The author most likely wrote this essay for which of the following audiences? A, B, C, or D? Which one says the same thing? Letter C. And here, one more practice. 10. The author probably quotes St. Augustine in order to A, B, C, or D. Which one says the same thing?
Yes.
So again, just this intentional practice of reading the question and understanding the question before you go about trying to answer.
Not a bad.
That was a typo.
Same idea, just a different focus here. Most students are pressed for time on the reading items. Out of all the students I've spoken with here, this is the one students typically run out of time on. So know that you're going to have to keep moving along here. You can save time by looking for the correct answers to items as you read the passage for the first time. Reading the passage and answering several corresponding items at the rate of less than 1 item per minute requires a very different skill than what you would typically use when reading a book or newspaper. Just sort of discipline yourself going into this to say, I'm not reading for fun, in case you needed to know that as you were going into reading for the ACT here. I'm not reading for pleasure, I'm not reading for intellectual stimulation or formation in any way. I'm reading this in order to get these questions right. And so, don't, you're going in with that as kind of your mode here, right? So don't go, hey, let me hang out here for a while and get some pleasure reading it. Again, looking at the questions, all the questions that they ask you will fit well into one of these topics. Again, just trying to get a good sense of what they're going to ask. So 7 different items. Number 1, they're going to ask you questions about the main idea of the passage. Something like, what is the unifying theme, the main idea? 2, they might ask you for explicit details. What is explicitly mentioned in the text? What does line 32 say? Something like that. 3, they'll ask you questions about vocabulary. How are certain words used? Note, and you can't always count on this, but most of the time when they ask you a vocabulary question, they won't be asking you for the prescriptive dictionary definition. It will be more within the context of this idea or within the context of this sentence, what does this word mean? Which might have a slightly different connotation to it than what you would initially think of as the dictionary definition of the word. 4, development questions. How are the ideas constructed and arranged? Are they in chronological order? Are they cause and effect? Right? How is this essay put together here? 5, an implied idea. What can be inferred? And it's good to recognize that because you'll note that then the answer will not be directly in the text. No matter how many times you read that paragraph, it won't say the answer is purple. You're going to have to read between the lines a bit. 6, application. How can the information be applied to new situations? So there too, the answer won't be explicitly in the text. You're going to have to understand the idea and then be able to relate it to something else. And then voice, and this could be a tough one. What does the writer reveal through attitude, tone, or voice? And there too, you're not going to find the answer explicitly in the text. You're going to have to understand the mood or the tone of this thing. So I've taken all 7 of those and tried to lump them together into 3 categories for you. Each of the 7 types of reading items or questions can be placed in one of 3 levels of comprehension. 1, general theme, meaning what's the main idea of this entire reading passage about? 2, specific points, and I'll group into that the explicit detail, the vocabulary, the development stuff. And again, good to recognize that because for all of those, the answer is right there in front of you. If you just look at the second paragraph or if you just look at line 37 or whatever it is, the answer is right there in front of you. And then 3, and this would be the toughest one, evaluation. Here the answer is not explicitly in the text. It's an implied idea or application or a voice or a tone kind of question that they'll ask you. And so I want to do, again, a little practice just understanding the questions here. I want you to code, and we'll go through these one at a time, but code each item stem or code each question according to the 3 levels of reading comprehension. Is the question a general theme question, a specific point question, or an evaluation question? And let's just go through one at a time here. So question 1. According to the passage, tears and laughter have all the following in common, except, I want you to tell me, is this a general theme, a specific point, or an evaluation kind of question? A specific point here, meaning the answer is right there in paragraph 1 or paragraph 2 or something like that. So you should go back, read that passage, and get the answer. It's right there in front of you. 2, the author implies that animals lack the ability to. Is this a general specific point or evaluation kind of question? Probably an evaluation, an implied idea kind of thing. And again, as we're taking the test, good to recognize that. So you're not going to then spend your time going back and rereading and looking for the answer in a specific line or a specific paragraph. Right? Here, this is more of a reading between the lines thing. 3, the word ludicrous in line number 17 most nearly means. probably a specific point. They give you a specific line number to go back to, and you've got this vocabulary word. What does this word mean here in this line? So easy enough then to go, hey, I need to go back to line 17, reread that, look at the word ludicrous, figure out what it means in that context. The author develops the passage primarily by here a good specific point, a developing question. Meaning, you should go back to the second paragraph and see how it's developed, right? And then all of a sudden you go, oh, all right, 1991, 2001, 2011, they're developing this through a chronological arrangement. 5, in the second paragraph, the author. Here to a specific point, so you know, hey, somewhere in that second paragraph, I'm going to find my answer. Question 6. Which of the following titles best describes the content of the selection? General theme, specific point, evaluation. You're probably a general theme. And so discipline yourself to say, this is not a question about just one paragraph. This is not a question about just one line. I need to look at the entire essay and come up with the main theme. And then the answer would be something like C, love equals friendship, or something like that. 7. It can be inferred from the passage that the executive director is authorized to make certain purchases costing less than $5,000 in order to. You're probably evaluation. No talking, please. So don't go back and reread that last paragraph 2, 3, 4, 5 times looking for the answer. It's an implied idea. The answer is not going to be directly stated there. The main purpose of the passage is to. Here too, probably a general theme idea, meaning you're looking at the entire thing. Don't be duped at choosing an answer that just relates to one part of the essay. Think about the essay as a whole. Number 9. The phrase color of the spirit in line 17 means. Here, if you wrote specific point, I'm fine with that. You're looking at a line number and a vocabulary word. But take note of something like this. They're probably not asking you for a direct definition of color of the spirit. Instead, you've got to sort of imply or figure out there, infer from that, what that expression means. I keep going. Just reflecting on those one more time. The first level of reading, appreciation of the general theme, is the most basic. Main idea items and items about the overall development of the selection test, whether you understand the passage at the most general level. Take note, the first sentence of a paragraph, often the topic sentence, may provide a summary of the content of that paragraph. Also, the last sentence of a paragraph usually provides concluding material that may also be helpful in understanding the general theme of the passage. So when you're reading through the passage, I would take special note of the first and the final sentences of each one of those each one of the paragraphs. And that will give you a strong indication of the general theme of the thing. Specific points. The second level of reading, understanding specific points, takes you deeper into the selection. Explicit detail items about the meaning of words, items about the logical role of details, all test your ability to read carefully. Since this is an open book test, you can always return to the selection. therefore is something that's highly technical or difficult to understand, do not dwell on it for too long. Come back to the item later if necessary. So again, with these questions, the answers will always be explicitly in the text. So as you're reading it the first time, if you come across a passage that's very difficult for you because of its technical language, you say the thing is about internal combustion engines, and the whole thing is about how the Johnson rod has a spark plug ratio of 3-to-1 over the manifold investor rattle liquid. And you say, man, I did not know what that meant at all, Mr. Dion. Then you say, I could go back and reread that passage a few times. However, I'll say don't do that, because they might not ask you a specific point on that passage at all. The only thing you might need to know about that is, hey, they were talking about cars right there somewhere. And so I wouldn't dwell on that unless they say, what does this vocab mean in line 37, and then they force you to go back to that passage. But otherwise, in your first reading through, I wouldn't spend time working through that. And then evaluation. The third level of reading, evaluation of the text, takes you even deeper into the selection. Implied idea, application, and voice items require, in addition to understanding of the material, judgment, and evaluation of what you have read. This is why these items are usually the most difficult. Is that way?
Get out of here.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Thanks, Misty.
Good to recognize this, because then you're not looking for specific items in the text as your answer, but also good to recognize this, because for some of you, and you're going to find out which one of you relatively soon, are going to be so pressed for time on this that you're going to end up guessing. And so I'll say guess on the evaluation kind of questions and not the general theme or specific point ones. You can find those answers. This one is going to be tougher to find a specific answer. So if you're going to guess on the harder ones. That makes sense. General strategy. This is not an exact science. Practice is essential to mastering the following techniques. I'm going to put forth a specific strategy that we're going to practice. My main intent is not that you use this strategy on the ACT. You're certainly welcome to, but if you say that's not for me, then that's not for you, and that's fine with me. But here, the point, though, still is learning about how to read the questions and how to think about the test. But come test time, if you want to tackle this in a different way, that's fine. But use this time to learn about the questions in the test. So here's what I'm going to lay forward as a general strategy. In your selection there, you'll have 4 different readings. And so read the first 2 sentences of each passage in the test selection. Don't do it yet. There is usually an introductory paragraph for each one that identifies the author and provides a brief description of the selection. Read this introductory material to gauge interest and read the first 2 sentences of each passage to determine its difficulty level. Label each passage as either easy or hard based on your initial understanding of the material and your level of interest. Analyze the easier passages first. Again, most of you are going to have a run for your money here on finishing this thing on time. So if you're going to run out of time, or if you're going to have to start guessing, let's run out of time and start to guess on the harder one instead of the easier one. So a good strategy is work easiest to hardest here. That way, if you're pressed